You are now listening to the number one podcast.
You have been digitally interrupted.
Mr. I am digital.
Okay, what's up, guys? So we are here for my first interview, video wise. You guys know digitally interrupted. I usually try to bring you guys just straight audio. I figured, hey, everybody wants to see the face behind the brand. So hi, Mr. I am digital. So I am here today. We have a special guest because this episode is actually special because I feel like this is going to touch a lot of hearts. It's going to tell a lot of stories that we don't normally hear every day. And you guys know me, around November, December, I just like to give things away, whatever I can. If I have it, I'm throwing it and I'm giving it away to somebody. So today we have a young lady here by the name of Amanda. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Now, I didn't want to be the one to introduce you too much. So I kind of want you to introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what are we going to be talking about today.
Okay, my name is Amanda Ferrero. I have had 7 brain surgeries for a cyst on my cerebellum. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. I did induction chemo and 4 consolidation therapies. And then I was told I was in remission. So I was happy, life went back to normal. And then 6 months after being told I was in remission, I relapsed. So I had to have another induction chemo. But because the cancer was so aggressive, I was told the only chance of me living was to have a stem cell transplant. So that's what I did. I had a stem cell transplant. And November 28th of this year, well, I will be 2 years old, which is pretty cool.
Well,
And
congrats.
I don't know who my donor is at all whatsoever. He's
Oh, wow.
some man in Italy. So hopefully
Wow.
one day we'll be able to talk.
Wow, nice. Wow. So everything that you said, I kind of want to break it down for those who are not too familiar, with
Okay.
what you're talking about, and as you guys let them know the name of your brand actually, because then I think we can actually start it from there.
Okay, so I started Cancer is an Asshole. Um, that's what it was for me. I mean, an asshole, somebody you don't want to deal with, you don't really want to be around.
Right.
Like when you don't like something, you're like, it's an asshole. And
Right.
that's what cancer was for me. So I started a blog and it's cancerisanasshole.com. And that's how I started really getting information out into the world.
All right. Well, see, as we all know, cancer is a very is I feel like it's something that, we all know about, but a lot of us don't want to discuss it, if that makes sense. It's
Yes.
like one of those topics that come up and everybody immediately just goes quiet because, for one, we've all lost somebody. I've lost somebody to cancer, so personally the story speaks to me in its own. And then also being a part of a minority community, it's normal for us, and that's something that a lot of us don't. Like I said, once again, we like to talk about it behind closed doors, but in public, we just don't talk about it. So, if you can start from the beginning of your journey, like tell us, like, what was life before cancer? Like, what was life like before it?
Well, I was a full-time mom. I had my son in 2013. My boyfriend was working. He was a studio engineer, and he was working, 70 plus hours a week. And I was home. I was a mom. I was doing things with my kid. It was like life is normal. And one day I didn't feel good. I went to the hospital. My life changed.
And what was that? What led up to that? Like, what was the series of things that were happening that made you be like, or was it something that you just found out in a routine checkup?
Well, I went to the hospital in March and I wasn't feeling good. I was really like lethargic. I was very pale. It was like hard for me to breathe. Things like when you have the flu, I guess, kind of symptoms. And I was like bruising really easily. And they told me I had mono, medicine to, relax and it'll pass in a few weeks and you'll be fine. But I felt like I was just getting worse and worse and worse. And then finally one day I said, I cannot live like this anymore. And I went back to the hospital, and through the blood work, they saw that I had cancer.
Hmm. That's deep because a lot of people, it takes a lot of people too long, I would say, or they catch it too late. When it came about, was it at an early stage? Well, obviously we know it was obviously at a stage where it was treatable. If
Right.
when we say now, what was that conversation like with the doctor though? Like, what was that like? What was, if you remember, what was his words when he came to you to tell you?
Well, I went in and, I'm a heavier girl. And I said, the doctor last time told me like the breathing was because I, need to lose a little bit of weight. And I said, look, it's not my weight. It's not like I know my body, something's wrong, and I need you to do tests. And that's what he did. He listened to me and he did the testing. And I was an advocate for myself. I made sure I put my foot down because I knew something was wrong. And
Right.
thank God I did, because he ran tests and as soon as he pulled up a chair and grabbed my hand, I knew something was wrong. And he was like, you're right. Something is wrong. You need blood because like, your normal red blood cell count should be between like an 11 and 13, and mine was a 5.2. Like, I
Mhm.
literally could have died in my sleep that
That's
night.
crazy. That's
So he
crazy.
was like, it's a good thing you came in, but you need to have a consultation with an oncologist tomorrow morning.
Right.
And I knew from that point that it was cancer.
So the process, how did you process these thoughts at that moment? Like, what was that process? Like, did you process it at all, or
So
did it take? How long did it take, if you would say?
So as soon as they told me and they started the blood, I
Mhm.
was in the hospital, so I had like no cell service.
Okay.
I had Wi-Fi, and then I messaged my sister through Facebook, and I said, "Call mom, go to her house and wake her up. I need her now. It's an emergency." And
Right.
as soon as I said that, my sister was banging on my mom's door, waking them up at 2 o'clock in the morning, saying like I was in the hospital, like contact me.
Right.
So I actually had the doctor call my mom and leave a message and say that I'm in the hospital, um, that they needed to get in touch with me. So they brought me up to the floor, one of the floors, I guess the cancer floor, and I waited. I didn't sign any papers. I didn't let them start anything. I wanted to talk to my mom, and I
Right.
also wanted a second opinion because I mean, why didn't they catch this a few months ago when I was at the hospital? How come I had to wait for this? Like, I wanted to make sure I was putting my life in the right hands
Right. Exactly.
because this was life or death.
Exactly. So, we always hear stories like this, and sometimes, like we said, it happens too late where people kind of, they just find out too late because, for one, maybe one, I think that another big thing is health insurance. When people don't have the insurance, it makes them tend to not want to go in a lot more because they just don't feel like they can afford it. Just before we jump back into that story, is there anything that you can touch on as far as like insurance for people who may be afraid at this point, that might be watching this and be like, you know what, I've been feeling sick, but I don't have the health insurance. Is there anything that you can tell them that they might need, that they might want to know at this point?
So, you literally can go to any hospital if you don't have insurance. There's something called charity care that the insurance will help you pay off the bills. And there are also thousands of charities that help people pay off their medical bills. So if you don't have insurance and you're worried about the medical billing, or you just don't have the money, I wouldn't hesitate. I always worry about yourself. The bills come later and you can figure that out. But you're not, what are you going to do if you die from not going to the hospital. If you feel like it's super important and you need to get checked out, go get checked out. And that's what I do on my website. I have resources for people that don't have disability or that don't have Medicaid or Medicare or private insurance. The hospital has charity care. If it is serious, you can always get disability from the state, whichever state you are in. So there are ways to go around it, but if you're feeling like something is wrong, go to the hospital because you know your body.
All right. Well, there you go. For anybody that's listening to this, there's nothing that's stopping you from learning about your health. So, getting back to now, what's that process like now that everybody knows what's going on? What appointments at this point are you making? Like, what are the like changes that you might have to make in your lifestyle? What's that process now on to the next step on trying to heal?
So, oh man. So do you want me to go from like me telling my family, or do you want to start from me being in remission?
No, I want you to start from where you had to like
Okay.
I want people to know, because like I said, we don't hear stories about this all the time. So we always hear you found out.
Okay.
And,
So
so yeah, touch on that.
so I went up to the floor that they put me in, and I waited for my mom, and she came at, I believe it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and we talked and we called around, and I said, the oncologist literally came into my room in the morning, like 6 a.m., and he was like, you have leukemia. We don't know how bad it is, but we're going to start chemo. No bedside manner. I was in the room with someone else, and I was hysterical to the point where the other person's mom came to me and was like, do you want a hug? I was hysterical. I feel like if you're going to tell someone they have a life-threatening disease, tell them privately and maybe have some compassion behind it. That's crazy to tell someone like you have cancer and just walk out of the room.
Right.
So that already turned me off. I was crazy with that. And then just having my mom there and deciding like what I want to do, like, is this for, like, I feel like I didn't have time. I was in the hospital and they wanted me to start ASAP. So for me, it was like calling around, what do I do? Luckily, we know other oncologists who are like, no, you need to go to a special, like a leukemia doctor, not just a doctor who doesn't like, does with all cancers. You need a
Right.
special doctor. So that's what I did. I left. I was brought in by ambulance to another hospital, and I got a second opinion because I wanted to make sure I was going to live. And it's my
Right.
life, and I felt like I needed that. The hardest part was telling my boyfriend
Right.
because he went from having a career and working full time
Right.
to having his girlfriend be diagnosed with cancer and being a full time parent to a 3-year-old and not knowing what was going to happen with the rest of his life.
Right.
We
And
had no idea.
let's let's ask the tough question. When you were told that, did you think you were going to die at that moment? Like not moment, but like did you think you weren't going to live as long as you live now?
No, not in that moment. I think it was my fight or flight switched in my brain,
Okay.
and I just wanted to know what I had to do.
Right.
At that moment, I wanted my son, and I couldn't be with him.
Right.
I was scared that I wouldn't be around him, but I just wanted to get it over and done with. That I was like, what do I have to do so I can go home?
Right. Okay. And did we know obviously your son was too young at that moment. Did you have a talk with him? Did you tell him like, hey, mommy's sick? Like, did you say anything to him at that time?
Um, honestly, I didn't even tell my boyfriend. I called his mom,
Okay.
and she's always been like a guiding light in my life. Just anything I need. She's the mom.
Right, right,
Like my mom is my mom, but how do I tell my boyfriend that I have a life-threatening disease?
mm,
Like, how do I like? And I was just looking for that guidance of like, what do I say?
right,
How do I tell him our whole entire life just did a 180 and like our future is unknown at this point?
right.
So she told him they actually came up to the hospital where I was. And we told Isaac that mommy was sick and I had to stay at the doctor's. And daddy would be home with him and he could call me anytime, but mommy had to be away for a little while because I was sick.
Right.
And that's all I told him in the beginning.
Okay. And then how long were you actually at the hospital at this point?
So I went from one hospital to another so that my mom's doctors could do their testing. And then I went from that hospital to Robert Wood Johnson, where I was treated
Okay.
33 days.
Wow. That's a long time to be away from your normal
Yeah.
life. I'm not even gonna say from home, just the normal life that you were used to
Yeah.
at that moment. So
Yeah.
what was that? What was that feeling like? Beyond just being sick, knowing you got to be away from home because you're sick. You went from this normal life where you're constantly around certain people every day. Did anything change at that moment when you were sick? Like I know sometimes people can't be around certain people when they're sick. Did you have to stay away
Yeah.
from certain people or even your own family members?
Yeah. Well, my son was not allowed up at the hospital. They don't usually allow people that are 15 or younger to come up to visit.
Gotcha.
However, I told them I wouldn't even go to the hospital if I couldn't see my son. So they did make an exception for me. They put my room right by the elevator. So when he came up, he went right. I only got to see him once a week.
Okay.
So I saw him 4 times
Right.
during the whole hospital stay. Um, but yeah, I mean, everything completely changed. And all cancers are different.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
sometimes you have surgery and then you get to go home.
Right.
Sometimes you have to go in to have your chemo, but then you get to go home.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have leukemia or a blood cancer, your literally whole body has cancer. And well, where I went, they like to keep you there just to monitor you because literally anything could happen.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. That's the crazier part, because I know we see things on TV or we see different people where, they say they have cancer, but they're home, and we always wonder like, well, why did they have to stay in the hospital? I actually appreciate you because I'm probably one of those guys where I didn't know that, certain cancers will require you to stay in the hospital. I just thought everybody did chemo, go home,
Right,
and
right.
stuff like that. So that's even crazier. Um, now these 33s are up, 33 days are up. What has happened in these 33 days? Like, describe like, what's a daily routine and while you're at the hospital for 33 days, like what's a daily thing?
So I started chemo the second day. Like I went there, I met my doctor, I met the nurses, and then the next day I started on chemo. So I think it was like 7 days full. I was getting the chemo. And then it was just pretty much like eating breakfast. It's like a normal day, but like I was in a hospital bed. So
Okay.
I watched my Ellen. I ate food. My mom came up. I didn't really, the first couple of days, I felt fine, but
Right.
my body was getting used to the chemotherapy.
Right. Okay.
Um, about a week into my chemo, my gallbladder was about to explode. And I had to have an emergency appendectomy. Oh, and that wasn't my gallbladder, it was my appendix.
Gotcha.
Um, so I was on chemo,
Hmm.
receiving platelets,
Right.
and I had to have an emergency surgery. But they said, I don't know if you're going to live because we've never operated on someone that's in the middle of chemo. So you literally could lose blood and die from bleeding out. It
Wow.
might go fine,
Right.
but if we don't do the surgery, you could die if your appendix ruptured.
Exactly.
And so I didn't really have a choice. So I
Right.
think that was scariest for me. And when I even think back, that was probably the scariest thing because I was in fight mode. I was ready to
Right.
fight, ready to do what I had to do
Yep.
just to get home to my son.
Right.
But when I needed that surgery, that was scary because the surgeons are like, we don't want to do this, but we have to, or you're going to die.
Yeah.
But you could die anyway. And I had to
Right.
sign that piece of paper saying, like, I knew what was happening, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to do it. So
Right.
I called my son before, I called Jesse before, we FaceTimed, and mommy has to have surgery, and I love you.
Hmm.
And, like, I'm proud of you, and I'll always be there. But that was scary.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
didn't know,
Exactly.
but I made it.
Right. Exactly. You did.
I made it.
Exactly. That's
But I
that's crazy. That's so crazy to think about, and I don't think that a lot of us who've never been through that, we don't understand that.
yeah,
And that's deep. That it's a win lose, a win win, or it can be lose lose. Like it's so many, but it's more the losing side that you have that like 15% chance of winning.
yeah,
And the fact that you do win, it's even more of a blessing. You know what I mean? And it just gives you more of an eye opener. It makes you appreciate life a lot differently. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
um, you know, I know that a lot of people go through changes physically, when you're on chemo. And obviously, I'm not gonna lie, I'm nosy, so I was digging. I had to see,
I have
what.
everything. I
Yeah,
had
exactly.
everything up there.
Open book, So
I shared everything.
talk about that, as a woman.
Right,
Men are a little different because, we normally don't kind of have hair, so it's not,
right.
so women though, I know it's kind of like is it like an ego killer? Is it a confidence killer when you guys have to go through that process of like knowing that you're losing your hair?
I mean, for me, it wasn't. I found strength in
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But a lot of times, like, yeah, like I even this morning, I was like, oh, I want to straighten my hair. It's like an accessory to a lot
Right,
of
right,
people.
right.
And I went on Facebook and I started a page
Mhm.
the day I found out I was diagnosed with cancer.
Got you. Okay. All right.
And it was more for family to keep in touch. I didn't want to have thousands of phone calls a day or text messages and explain to people the same story.
Right.
So
Right.
it was
Exactly.
more of, I'm going to post this on this page. I invited my family and I said, I will share my journey here so you can keep in touch with me. You can see what's going on. And I also wanted to share it because my sister had brain cancer when she was 6. My aunt
Okay.
had Ewing sarcoma. My
Okay.
grandfather died of lung cancer. And a lot of times people don't really understand what people go through. They don't see the whole process.
Right.
They
Yeah.
just say, oh, you have cancer. Oh, I feel sorry. You have to do chemo. And then when you're done, it's like, okay, you're done. But I know from experience it's not like that. So I
Right.
was like, I'm going to own it. I am taking full force. I am taking my life over and I'm sharing this.
Nice. Okay.
So when the time came where my hair was falling out, I mean, I took pictures of it and I shared it. And then when it was time to shave my head, I have pictures of video. I went live
Hmm.
and I showed everybody my mom shaving my head. And a lot of the times that's the hardest for so many people because when you're bald, you feel like a cancer patient.
Right. Exactly.
Because then people see you as, oh, she's bald, she must have cancer.
Hmm. Yep.
So I owned it. Yep, I have cancer, but guess what? I'm shaving my head before it can take it away from me. I'm
Right.
doing it. I'm doing it first. I owned it. It for me it was like F you cancer. I'm taking my hair off. You don't get that.
Right.
To
Okay.
me it was a strength thing.
And I'm actually, you know what? And I'm gonna say, we're gonna give you a round of applause for that because I've seen a lot of people, I've seen stories just like you have opened up your story on social media. I've seen a lot of stories on social media as well. And I've seen times where people have given up, and they let it take over not even over their body, but just over their life in general, where they just don't have that fight in them no more. A lot of people can't say, oh, I've been in remission, gotten it back, and fought it again and beat it again. A lot of people don't have that multiple times they've beat cancer, So um after these 33 days are up, you know, what now? Like what are we doing now? 33 is over, 33 days is over.
Right.
What's the prognosis? Like what's going on?
So after the 21-day mark, I had a bone marrow biopsy and it showed no cancer,
Okay.
which was good. We were happy. So technically it was like a early remission, but it was cancer free. So I went
Right.
home. When I was able to go home, every other day I was going to the hospital.
Right.
So Monday I would go, Tuesday I was home, Wednesday I would go. I would have blood work done, and then if I needed a blood transfusion or platelets, I would have that. So sometimes my hospital visits would be 8 hours long because I would go in not knowing I needed blood, and then they would have to call the blood bank, get me blood, and then I would have to sit there and get the blood.
Right.
And it was depending on who took me. My dad took me, my mom's friend Jessica, her best friend took me sometimes, my mom took me, my aunt took me, Jesse took me sometimes because I couldn't drive myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was very, I mean, then you think about the gas, the tolls, the needing food when you're up there, not feeling well or wanting to have a slice of pizza, but then being sick from the taste of the pizza. And
Right.
it's just everything you don't think about doing. I mean, all that stuff adds up. Parking, it's $6 a day to park. I mean, everything.
Right.
And I wanted everybody to understand what that was like. So I shared all of it.
And like you said, it's just the little things that we don't realize that add up. What is what is that, the 8 hours? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what is your body feeling like as you're coming out of, as you're done with this process and these procedures? What is the body itself, not your mind, because we know mentally you're gone already. What's your body physically feeling like at that point?
Well, a lot of the times you lose weight. I lost, I think, like 40 pounds just in that month, just because you're sick and
Right.
you're throwing up and you
Right.
can't eat and you have diarrhea and you're putting
Right.
poison into your body
Right.
and you're drained. You're like, you just moving your hands hurt, like it hurts.
Right.
It's physically painful.
Okay.
So you're mentally drained.
Right.
You're in a place of like, how am I going to afford this?
Right.
You're on all this medication to save your life, but your body is so worn down that it's like it takes all of your energy just to walk to the bathroom.
Right. And what now, if I'm not mistaken, I know I've read up on chemo. What is for people that never, who don't know medically? Because I'm pretty sure, with having, this happen to you, you've done all your research, you've done a lot of research. What
Yes.
what is physically going on with this chemotherapy? Like what is going on in your body? Like what's happening to it?
Okay, so first off, there is not just one type of chemo. There are thousands of different types and combinations
I
of
was gonna say
chemo.
combinations of medication. All right, I know about that.
Right. So not everyone is the same,
Okay.
but the same chemo is a poison. So that's basically, everybody who gets chemo, it's a poison to kill the bad cells, but
Right.
in killing the bad cells, you do kill some of the good cells.
Is that like is that what we call like resetting your immune system?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I know, all right, at least hey, I'm not a doctor. I'm like, at least I know I'm not going crazy. So,
Yeah.
and like you said, with losing weight, you're vomiting and everything like that. The thing is, only reason I ask these questions is because people that haven't heard your story personally or never even seen a story of a cancer patient, they don't get these like raw emotions, or they don't get these raw stories about what goes on. They, like I said, it's just the beginning and the end. They don't get the middle. They don't, and I haven't had that experience. Now, I've had a stomach virus before. You know, what is that feeling when you're getting this chemo but you want to vomit? Like, why do you want to vomit? Like, what do you feel like before you want to vomit? Like, I want you to tell people.
So how I explained it was, have you ever had the flu before?
Yes, plenty of
Where
times.
you're in bed and your body hurts and you
Right.
don't want to get up.
Right.
And even getting up to go to the bathroom, you're like, and your body hurts really bad.
Right.
And every time you eat, you just feel sick to your stomach.
Right.
It's like that times 10.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's draining.
Is that every day though? Is that like an everyday feeling? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is. So like the first few days, I would say the first 3 days, I was fine. And I was like, oh, I could do this.
Right. You didn't see it coming.
And then your hair, like, usually they say about a week or two is when you really start feeling the effects of chemo. So like, even if you take Tylenol, it takes 45 minutes for you to feel it.
Gotcha.
So when you get chemo into your body fights it at first. So your immune system goes into overdrive, and the good cells are fighting it because it's more bad.
Right.
So it takes a while for all those bad cells to then die off.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why they say people with, going through treatment have like no immune system, because it kills everything.
Right.
So, I mean, you're tired. I mean, putting clothes on, taking a shower. I mean, anything you could, blinking your eyes hurt. Everything hurts.
Did you find yourself just kind of like laid up a lot more than usual?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I could barely move. I mean, I would try and like put a smile on my face, and my son, we would play games in the bed so that I could lay down.
Exactly.
But I mean, it was so hard. And then having to get up to go back to the hospital, and I needed help. I have 3 stairs, so I have to walk up 3 stairs and then go outside, and just to get in the car. I mean, it probably, normally it would take me like 3 minutes to get up, go and get into the car.
Right.
It was like half an hour, because one step, stop, breathe. 1 step, stop, breathe.
Oh, so this is like your whole system. This is not just aches and everything else. Like you have a hard time breathing. You just have a hard time doing anything with your body. It's just
it felt like I was running a mile every time I took a step, because you're just you just feel like there's pressure on your body, but you're just so beaten down, and you're through so much.
Gotcha.
Like if you got hit by a car, you wouldn't, it would take a process to recover from that. Your body would hurt every step you would take. That's what it feels like, but it's like inside.
Gotcha.
It's horrible.
You are now listening to the #1 podcast.
You have been digitally interrupted.
Mr. I Am Digital.